Well, again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Today, I get the honor on introducing Lessa today to give us a little talk. She's here on behalf of the Christian Science Board of Lectureship. And as a member of that board, she goes around the world giving talks, much like the one you're going to hear today, about taking a spiritual standpoint and taking that basis of spirituality to make a difference in the world. Pretty spectacular and radical things. In addition to being a member of the Board of Lectureship, she also serves, and this is a mouthful, as the regional manager for the media division of the Committee on Publication in Boston, Massachusetts. That office, the Committee on Publication in Boston, has a lot of different functions, correcting misconceptions of Christian Science in the public eye, but really more focused and importantly on monitoring the trends in health, and then more importantly, ushering and really embracing that shift from focusing as health being determined by material symptoms and really being determined by that essential and focal point of spirituality in our relationship with God. So she works avid with that, and her specific role in the Committee on Publication is to give an international perspective to that work. So she's an invaluable member of that team, so thank you so much for that work. Most importantly, she is here for us today because of her immaculate practice in Christian ministry and healing ministry as a Christian Science teacher and practitioner. As a young child discovering Christian Science and really feeling that science that is unlocked in different books that I'm sure she'll mention today really unlocked the teachings of Christ Jesus. And moving forward with that, she saw healings in her own life and healings of her parents with different things, and then continued in her study unselfishly, giving that same warmth and love that I know you all already felt in her presence, and healing others. And so please know that today you not only have the opportunity to participate and engage in Leide's talk, but you also have the more priceless opportunity to feel an uplift of love in your heart today. So please help me give a warm welcome to my dear friend and colleague, Leide Lessa.
Thank you very much for your nice introduction, Jake. So thank you all for being here today. It's my pleasure to be talking to you today. And it's my pleasure to be here in Houston. And I hope we're going to have a good time talking together. And please feel free to ask any questions if you may like, if you have any questions. So we are here to really talk about something that is very, very important. And I would say the joy of saying yes to what is right. And when we learn how to say yes to what is right, we also learn our divine right to say no to what is wrong. And it is interesting because I like to think that, for example, if you have 2 glasses of water, one glass might be full with clean water, and the other one has dirty water in it. So if you are thirsty and you can choose for those 2 glasses of water, which one would you pick?
Obviously the clean.
Obviously the clear one? Yeah. If we are, for example, swimming, let's say that we would like to swim, and there is a pond there, very nice. One has also clean water, the other one has dirty water. Which one are we going to choose? The clean one, right? And why are you not going to choose the dirty water to swim, for example?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So it's really not so good. But when we choose clean water, we're really choosing what is pure. And that purity really satisfies. That purity brings what we really need at that moment and satisfies and gives us happiness and joy. So, but what is important, and this is just to make a point, that we always in life, any time of our lives, it doesn't matter what kind of circumstance we face, we have a choice. We always have a choice. I would like to say that because we always have a choice, sometimes it's not so easy to choose the right things, right? For example, if you think, is it easy or difficult to say no to friends? If a friend asks a question, or if a friend asks a favor, let's say that maybe you are so busy and you really don't think you have time to say to do that thing. But sometimes, is it easy to say no to a friend?
No.
It's not. Is it easy to say no to a boss if a boss asks you to do something? And sometimes, how do we feel? Do we feel pressured to do it because a boss has asked to? Yeah. I think it is very important that all those situations that really seem hard for us to say no, we can learn how to say no without having bad feelings, especially if that no is not so good for us, if that situation might not be a nice and good situation for us. What is also important is that in order to make the right decision in our lives, regardless of what the problem we might be facing, it is important that we can, anytime, connect with a source of intelligence, a source of intelligence that really directs us and guides us to take the right steps at the right time, at the right moment. And it is interesting that what we are talking about today, it's not just positive thinking. It is not just a way of thinking or a way of maybe, yeah, I will from now on just learn how to say no to everything that I don't like. It is not just that simple. But what is important is that by studying this book, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, written by Mary Baker Eddy, we can learn a science of the Christ. We can really learn what Christ Jesus has really taught us, because the teachings of Christ Jesus are current and are applicable, but really behind those teachings there is a science, and that's why we say a science of the Christ, or Christian Science. And when we think about science, so how can we best define science, for example? How would you define science?
It's the study of something that you can demonstrate, you can apply.
Very good. A study of something that you can demonstrate, that you can apply on a daily life, so on your daily basis. And what is really important is that Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures really teaches you the science of your being. What is really what you can learn so that you can have a better life, so that you can feel free, so that you can live happy and joyful. Another thing that it's also important is that Christian Science teaches that there are no mysteries. It's very interesting because there are so many mystical things or mystical thinking around us, and a lot of people think, oh, we cannot define God. God is a mystery. Or we cannot define why we are here, why we live. But Christian Science, on the opposite, really clears out all the mysteries, because there are no mysteries for God. Once we have that pure thought, the pure thinking, when we learn how to study the Bible with this metaphysical thinking that Mary Baker Eddy, the founder and discoverer of Christian Science, and the author of Science and Health, the way she explains, she brings the Bible to our lives in a way that it's practical, that the teachings are really practical, and we can live much better and learn how to say no to things that sometimes are not good. And one thing that it's important, when we learn how to say no to something that it's not good, we're actually really saying yes to what is good in many aspects of our lives. Mary Baker Eddy talks in her book, Science and Health, that God is the true, is the sole source of existence. We really exist because God exists. We really think because God is the divine mind, the creative mind, the source of all thinking, the source of all intelligence. And that's why we live. That's why we can think. That's why we can always make right decisions. So God is really the only condition for our existence. We exist because God is the true source of existence. And we can say yes to life. We can always say yes to a life of joy, to a life of fulfillment. And by saying yes to what is right, we can learn how to say no to what is wrong. We can really connect to the divine mind that is always and always perfect. A divine mind who knows the past, the present, and the future. A divine mind that is all-knowing, and that all-knowing is only good. That divine mind never fails. The divine mind never makes mistakes. And when we connect with that divine mind, we can also take right steps. And it is important that we learn how to say no to what is not good. For example, if we learn to say no to what doesn't make us feel good or what is not good for us, we learn how to say no to drugs, how to say no to abusive relationships, how to say no to oppressive thoughts or oppressive relationships that happen so much. So it is really important that we learn how to take a stand, how to live a life that really represents who we are, and a life that is connected to that source of creation, that it's always good, that it's always pure, that it's always connected to something that is really important and meaningful to life. Hi, welcome. Hi. So we're here talking about how the importance of saying yes to what is right and no to what is wrong. So I can tell you that I have learned this by experience. In my whole life, I've studied, and I mentioned this book before since you just got here. So this is the book, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, and this book really presents the science behind Jesus' teachings in a metaphysical way. And I have been studying this book along with the Bible since I was a teenager. And this book really helped me to see the world and to see things in a different way. And it has given me strength to say no in moments that were, I would say, really critical. And it's interesting because sometimes when we think about teenagers or when we think about... So what is the most common comments that you hear about teenagers that maybe it might not be good?
Having sex.
Pardon me?
Having intercourse.
Okay, having intercourse. Where else?
They don't always make the best decisions.
Do not always make the best decisions.
Alcohol is good.
Alcohol is good, yes. A lot of teens all the time want to really try alcohol. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it is so interesting that, unfortunately, what is happening in the United States, the cause of death among teenagers, the number one cause is alcohol. But actually, it's not just alcohol, because what happens? They drink and then they drive. So people think that there are accidents, car accidents, but actually what happens is because of alcohol. So we hear a lot that teens sometimes are irresponsible or cannot make best decisions. And it's important for us to uplift our thoughts and to see teenagers, or kids, teenagers, and adults with a different perspective. If we want to make a difference in the world, if we want the world to be better, if we want, for example, the rates of accidents to go down, or the rates of crimes to come down, how can we do it? Sometimes the world is so big. What is the population of the world?
7 billion.
7 billion, over 7 billion. So sometimes it might seem that we feel so impotent that we cannot help the world. But if we have the right perspective, the right thinking, and if we can see teenagers, young adults, and elderly people with the right perspective, with a spiritual perspective, we can help. We, with our thoughts, can help to change the world for better. And I'm not kidding, I have seen this over and over in my healing practice, that the way you think, the way you see people and circumstances, if you have a metaphysical approach and the right approach, you can change things for better. We need to know the true reality of humankind. We need to know, though, that this true reality is the way that God created everyone. And God is this divine mind. God is really love. God is the only source of creation that created everyone pure, intelligent, beautiful, harmonious. And by studying the Bible and by studying science and health, we learn how to see this. We learn how to think metaphysically. And we need to, it's interesting because I'm telling you that God created the man, or humankind, as his image and likeness. But sometimes we open the news and we just see a lot of crimes, right? We see a lot of accidents. I was just reading the New York Times this morning, and the situation in the Ukraine is very, very sad. So we see then the situation in Venezuela, what is happening with demonstrations. It's also very sad. So I took a cab yesterday, and the person was from Israel. I asked him where he was from, and he said, I'm from Israel, but I am Palestine. And we had a long conversation about peace and about the situation there. So there's so many things going on in the world that then when we read the Bible, when we read Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26, when it says that God created man, and here it means man and woman, as his image and likeness, and gave them dominion. It's hard sometimes to see it, but the Bible assures us that yes, man is the image and likeness of God. And because God is good, because God is love, the only image and likeness of God can be good. Cannot be disturbing, an image that will make that will make war, or will make prejudice, will have prejudice. How can we think differently? Because we are talking about the image and likeness, that's the way that the Bible defines. I like to think of a mirror. So I have a mirror here in front of me. And so if we sometimes need to put a makeup, or maybe man, if you have to do your beard or something, so you have to, so if you want to put a makeup on, for example, or a man, if you want to, how do you say it? If you want to shave. Thank you. Shave. Okay, thank you. Is it easy if you want to shave without looking at the mirror? It's not, no. Right? So, or to put a makeup, you also need to see it. So, if the mirror is here, what do you have to do? You have to move. You really have to move to be in front of the mirror so you can see it. The move that we have to do in life In order to be loving, intelligent, healthy, we need to move first mentally. And we need to move ourselves and look at that divine creation and understand and realize and accept that yes, we are the image and likeness of good. We are the image and likeness of love. We are the image and likeness of really what is good. But it needs a mental shift. It needs a mental move so that you can identify yourself with that divine source. We need to see that God is really love, as the Bible defines. And then you can think this as your ID. The ID identify ourselves, right? So wherever we go, we have to show our driver's license, right? So that's our ID. What is important? We can have a spiritual ID. Our spiritual ID is that our identity is really spiritual. Our identity is not material. Our identity is not of someone who can harm our neighbor. It's not an image of someone who can maybe do something bad or be ill or be irresponsible, as we were saying before. No. Our spiritual ID, our spiritual identity, it's always good, always perfect. We just need to shift our thought to see it. I like to be really thinking, and if you from starting today realize that this divine mind, all-knowing mind, is all creative and is talking to you every single moment, and that you can listen to that divine mind, that the intelligent mind, your life will be different. You are going to be able to make better decisions in your life. You are going to be able to feel what you have to do, when you have to do, in the best way you can do it. I like to think of two analogies that I would like to mention. For example, have you ever driven on a very, very hot day in a long, long street on the road? Have you done that? So it's very hot. The sun is shining. So you're driving. It's a long, long way. So you look at the asphalt. How does it look like? How does the asphalt, how does it look like?
Moving a little bit.
Yeah, we have the impression that it moves a little bit, right? And what else?
Looks like water.
It looks like water, right? It does look like water. But is there any water there?
No.
So what is it?
A mirage.
It's a mirage. So what I like to think is that every time that we see something bad in someone, or that we see an aggressive person, or that we see an unpolite person, or a criminal, that is kind of a mirage. That is not the image and likeness of God. And I could tell you many stories about myself. For example, once somebody, I was in front of my house, and a guy came and wanted to take my car, and he showed me a gun. And I was very calm. And I really, in those seconds, I only thought, he is the image and likeness of God. He can't do me any harm. He is the Son of God. He is perfect and pure. I had only a few seconds to do that. So, and then that guy asked, it was late in the night, it was midnight, and he said, okay, jump in the car. And he had a friend. He said, jump in the car, and you're going to drive. So I said, okay. I was opening my gate, because I was going to park inside. So, but then I locked the gate. And what is really important is that God talks to us at every time. As I was mentioning to you, we can listen. God is that divine mind that knows everything. So what happened to me then, I felt that I should obey what I was listening from God. And so I just went into the car very quickly, closed the door, and took off. And when I did that, of course, he had a gun, as I told you. And I saw and I heard, the bullet. And I was thinking, okay, is it in the car somewhere? Is it somewhere? And it wasn't. It didn't, he couldn't find, he didn't shoot at the car or at me. And I was protected, I was safe. I drove maybe 2 miles and I got to a gas station. And in that gas station I wanted to call. There was many years ago, I didn't have a cell phone at that time. But then I just saw a policeman coming and I called the policeman and he came. And then I explained the whole story. We were still looking to see if I could find the bullet in the car, but I couldn't. We couldn't. And then he called another friend, so 2 police cars came to me and with me at home. And then I was able to go inside and I was protected and everything was right. So of course, I would not say that everybody should do what I did, but it was what I felt at that moment. And it gave me protection. I was protected. The car was not taken. And I was okay. When we take this habit of always see good in someone else, in those people, or in those around us, things change and we can feel protected. I also would like to ask you about a counterfeit. So let's imagine that I have here a $100 bill. I don't have one here in my hand, but if I had one and I showed it to you, and if I show it to you, could you tell me if that, when you see a $100 bill, can you tell me if that $100 bill is an original or a counterfeit?
I suppose it depends the quality of the counterfeit.
Okay. She thinks it depends on the quality of the counterfeit. What about most of you? What do you think?
It depends on how well you know what the $100 bill looks like.
Okay, it might depend on how well you know how a $100 bill looks like. Yeah, it's very hard. If the quality is good, if you know how it looks like, sometimes it's really hard. I used to come to this country many years ago when I was still living in Brazil. And I would bring a $100 bill, and it was very hard to be accepted. They would do whatever they could just to see really if it was real or not. With human eyes, it's very hard to identify counterfeits. But with spiritual eyes, you can do it. In whatever bad situation, like that guy, he was probably 17 years old, the one who had the gun and wanted to take my car. Probably he didn't know how to drive, because if he did, he would have asked me the key instead of just asking me to drive. That was a counterfeit. That was not him. Because I was able to see his spiritual identity at that moment, he couldn't harm me. And he couldn't harm himself. Because if he did, it would be a big problem for him, too, if he had done a crime. And I really hope that that experience has helped him as it has helped me. A lot of time we do have optical illusions in our lives. I would like you to think from today on that whatever bad things happened to you, or to your family, or to your friends, it is not from this divine source. And it's not supposed to happen. Bad things, a bad life, problems are not natural. What is natural and what we all deserve is a good life, a harmonious life, and happiness. So does it mean that I don't have problems? Do you think that I don't have any problems in my life?
Yeah.
Yeah? You're wrong. You're wrong. I do have problems in my life sometimes. But because of this way of thinking, Because of my ability, the ability that I've learned to think metaphysically, to see metaphysically, to look for the spiritual ID instead of looking to the appearance, I solve problems much easier, or much easier, I would say. And I get healthy much easier. And I keep my health in a very natural way. And that is possible to any one of us. That's why when we see disobedient children, rebels, irresponsible adults, what is the truth about them?
Image and likeness of God.
They are the image and likeness of God. But are they, if they are rebels, if they are doing crimes, is that the image of God?
No.
That's not. So that's what we have to identify, okay? It is not that we are not considering or just ignoring evil or ignoring a bad behavior. But by seeing metaphysically, we are able to do what?
Say yes to the truth.
Say yes to the truth and bring correction to the problem. And that is what God enables us to do every time. So a Christian metaphysician, what does a Christian metaphysician know? To say yes to the divine creation, to say yes to what is very good, because the Bible also says that God created everything. And after his creation, he looked at it and he saw that it was very good. So we can see that everyone is very good at every moment, everywhere, anywhere. So what does Christian Science or the science of the Christ do? Enables us to see our spiritual identity. The science of the Christ gives us the authority to say no to whatever is wrong in our lives and to live a good life. We have that authority. We deserve it. We deserve to be happy and to feel happy. The Christ is really the manifestation of God. Jesus was the fulfillment of the prophecy from the Old Testament. But what he expressed was the Christ. And each one of us today can also feel and express that Christ-like thought. We can feel and express the Christ in our lives, the manifestation of that love, divine love, infinite love, that brings us healing, that brings us purpose, that brings us happiness, that brings us joy in everything that we do, and that also, of course, enables us to say no to whatever is wrong. And what is also interesting is that Christian Science also teaches that because we have dominion, we have dominion to say no to impulse. We don't have to act as an impulse. We can have dominion of our thoughts. Sometimes have you ever heard, oh, this is too difficult for me. Oh, this is so hard to learn. How can I learn for this exam? Or why is this teacher so bad? Have you thought about those things?
It's boring.
It's boring. Oh, this class is so boring. All those bad thoughts, they really distract us. They take us away from our goal. But when we know that we have this Christ authority, this manifestation of divine intelligence with us, within us, we can stop those bad thinking, whatever they might be, whatever kind of bad thinking comes to us. And sometimes we think that we don't have patience to do things. So, this takes so much time. I'm not so patient. I can't do this. But the Bible also guarantees us that God is the God of patience. And because God is the God of patience, we are patient. And we can, by reflection, of course, if we move mentally, and we can express that patience. We can say yes to order, to an orderly life. We can say yes to discipline. We can say yes to love ourselves and to love our neighbor. And discipline is not something bad. Discipline is good. It's a blessing for us. It helps us to accomplish much more than we can maybe imagine doing it without it. But it's important to have true love, to know when we know that we are saying yes to divine love, we learn naturally to be loving, to respect others. And I like to really think that limits sometimes are not bad. When we learn how to respect others, we also know how far we can go. And by knowing how far we can go, we're never going to step on someone else's business. And that happens also with us. When we respect others, others will respect us. Everything in life is just exchange. And everything starts in our thinking. The way we think and the way we really manage our lives. So that's why when we learn that divine manifestation of dominion that we talked about it, that the Bible mentions, we find also true satisfaction. I always think, I don't know if there are several parrots here in Texas, but where I'm from Brazil, there are lots of parrots, you know. Pardon me?
We have lots of
You have lots of them too. Okay. So parrots, really, they learn how to reproduce a few words, right? And they learn it so well, right? And sometimes, because we say no a lot of times, those parrots, they just repeat it. We're not like parrots in anything, in any way of our lives. We have this consciousness that is really infinite. And when we realize that we are part of an infinite, intelligent consciousness, we know when it's right to say yes and when it's right to say no. God is not superficial, but God is completely scientific. And why? And I say scientific because of what we mentioned before, that a science is always demonstrable. So whatever we learn about God and how good God is, we can demonstrate in our lives, in everything we do. I would like to very quickly just mention two experiences that I had to make a little point. For example, when I was 13 years old, because I am the youngest in my family and my siblings are much older than me, and my mom passed on when I was 10, I was just raised kind of very alone. And I used to do a lot of things alone. And so when I was 13, I went to a mall. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was just talking and going around, and so seeing a lot of things. And then there was a fountain there, and I just sat and I was just looking at the fountain, and then a guy came. And he came and he started talking to me, and we talked, and then he said, "Oh, let's go out, it's still daylight, why don't we go outside?" I said, "Oh, sure." So we went outside. And so we went outside, and he took me to a road here, a road there, and we got to a dead-end road, and nobody was there. So, and then we stopped in the middle of the road, and he put his hand on a pocket, and he took something, and he opened it, and then he took something green and put it there, and I've never seen that before. So he rolled it, and then he lighted it up, and then he offered to me. It didn't smell good. And then for some reason, I thought, this is not something good. And I said, "Oh, no, thank you." And he insisted. And I said, "No, thank you." "Oh, but it's so good. You can just try. You're going to feel so good." And I said, "Oh, I feel good right now. Thank you very much. You can continue that, and I will just take my way." And I left. So what do you think it made me, at that moment, say no to him? You know, it was a very looking guy. Very good looking guy. I could have said yes, right? So simple. Why do you think I said no?
Because you were saying yes to purity,
I was saying yes to purity.
obedience,
Obedience to what?
the law of the land, spiritual law.
Yeah, but maybe when we are 13, we don't know of the law of the land. But yes, I was saying yes to the law of the land, yes. But what else? What do you think? What was really something that made me say no at that moment?
Well, you knew it wasn't good.
I knew that it wasn't
Intuitive.
good. Oh, okay. So now we're getting there.
Intuition.
I knew intuitively that that was not so good. It couldn't be so good. We can trust our intuition. When you developed that habit of connecting to this divine creative mind, that it's always intelligent, that knows everything, intuitively, you know things. And what enables you to have that intuition that you're talking about is a spiritual sense. So we all have that, and you all can really develop that.
So would you make the comment that it's not age driven? Because at 2 years old, 6 years old, you can have that.
We not only can, but we do have
You
it.
have it. Yes,
So
yes. That's the point I
the
was-
spiritual sense
Yeah.
is a divine ability that we all have. And regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of anything, we all have this spiritual sense that it's good and that shows us and opens the way for us for many things. And yes?
Something I think is really important for all of us, because peer pressure is not just in high school or middle school. There's peer pressure even as adults.
Right.
And this counteracts, this divine intuition counteracts peer pressure.
You are absolutely right. We have peer pressure at any age, at any time in our lives, regardless of what we do and how old we are. But spiritual sense counteracts it. We have dominion. We learn how to say no to peer pressure, to a boss that is possessive, or to any abusive relationship, as we talked before, or to any kind of pressure. So you have dominion over your life and over your thinking. And when you know that, you see that your horizon is really unlimited and you're not afraid of anything. The other thing that came, and since we're saying about pressure, peer pressure, when I was 14, I also went with a friend to dance. She invited me. She wanted to go by herself, and her mom didn't let her go. And then, because the mom trusted me, she said, "Okay, if you go with Leide, you can go." So we went, and it was an afternoon section. And then I was there. I think I was standing, and then she went to dance. And then when she came back, she came with 2 guys, and she said, "Oh, Leide, look, they have a motorcycle." So does anybody like motorcycle here?
Yeah.
No, I love it, because I do too. I love motorcycles. And then I said, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Oh, yes, and they are inviting us to take a ride." Oh, he said, "Oh, okay, great." So we both were 13, and they were maybe 18, 19. I don't know how old they were. But she went with one guy in one motorcycle. I went with another guy with another motorcycle. So we were going somewhere, and then out of a sudden, he stopped he went to a back road, and then he stopped in a place, and he said, "Oh, let's go up." And I said, "Up to where?" And he said, "Oh, I live right here, and we can just, listen to some music and just relax a little bit." And I said, "Oh, are your parents there?" And he said, "Oh, no, nobody's at home." And I didn't even know where I was. I just thought for a minute, and I said, "No, thank you. Maybe I just want to go back and maybe take another ride." And he said, No, let's go upstairs. And he insisted. And again, I said, "No, thank you." And I went out. I just took my road, my way. I didn't know the area very well, but I didn't want to do that. I felt again from that intuition that it was not something good. And even nowadays, I have sometimes really those feelings. Oh, even when I'm driving sometimes. And you can develop that intuition too, so that you can say no when you sense that something is not good. So what is also important is that even when we have bad experiences in our lives, don't worry. God always forgives us. And God takes us again to a better place. So God is a loving God. And God forgives us always. And God always embraces us. This divine infinite mind. So good is natural. And what is important is that we can always look for good around us. And when we look for good around us, we may find a lot of good things, and that we are grateful for those good things, and then we are happier, and then we feel better. We feel much better. It is important to say no to things that are generally, that people just think that they're normal. As we mentioned before, that sometimes the school is too difficult, or I don't have enough money, or there is, yes, I'm studying, but what am I going to do after my studies? Maybe there are not enough jobs here, or am I going to be able to finish this course? This seems so difficult. Do not accept that. Any kind of imposition, or any kind of feeling that it's too limiting for you, because you are able to do all things if you trust this divine creative mind. And another idea that I love that Mary Baker says in this book, Science and Health, is that we can always put on the armor of love. So we can always feel protected, we can always feel safe. She uses a word that it's called panoply, but panoply of love, armor of love, is just a mental clothing, I say. You wrap your thought with love, and then you feel protected. We can always say no to a sense of victim. When we understand that we are never a victim through God's eyes, we can see our purity, and we can feel God's help, and we can get out of a situation that puts us as a victim. The first thing is not to accept that we are a victim. Why? Because there is never a victim without an oppressor. But there is no oppressor without a victim. If you don't accept that you are a victim, you can never be victimized. And that's again a mental position, a mental approach of life. In any situation, in any stage of our lives, we're never a victim. I see in my life that Science and Health, and we have some Science and Health on the back if you'd like to have some. This group is given you as a gift if you'd like to read it. It's a very good read. I really love it. And it has helped me all my life. And I feel that those two books, Science and Health and the Bible, are like a fort that protects me. So I feel always protected by studying those books. And they gave me also, and give each one of us, the opportunity to transform ourselves, and to transform ourselves for better. We can say yes also to life without pain. As Jake mentioned before, I am in the healing ministry of Christian Science, which means that I help people through prayer. And so I help people sometimes who are in horrible pain. And they call me, we pray together. There is a shift of thought so they can feel that God is not the creator of pain, that God is omnipotent love, and then the pain goes away. I would like to tell you briefly a story of a friend of mine who was 21 years old, and she got pregnant. She got pregnant. She was not married. It was a very difficult situation for her, but she thought, and she decided to keep the child. And she went, she had her pregnancy, and she decided that she would like to have her pregnancy and the birth without any medical assistance. And this is not very common. The story happened in Brazil, and it's not as common to have babies at home in Brazil as it is here. So she had a hard time finding somebody who could help her to deliver the baby at home. And then she Googled it, and she found a doctor that was following a German philosophy, and he was a doctor, but he didn't use any medicine, and he accepted to deliver the baby at home. And she didn't want to have any anesthesia even. She said, no, I just want to have a very pure birth. And she was very young, as I told you, only 21 years old. But she had studied those books too. She knew that God is good, that God is not the creator of pain and of suffering, and that this is just a belief, this is something that people have believed always since the beginning of the civilizations, that birth has to be something painful. So she told me that during the delivery, when she was at home, and the baby was coming, she felt that presence of the Christ. And she felt it so deeply, in a way that it's hard to put in words, that the delivery just came very naturally, and she had the baby without pain. The girl is today very healthy, is about 5 years old, and they are very, very happy. So that is what happens when we trust and when we understand this God as a creative mind. Jesus also learned how to say no, and Jesus, I like that experience. Do you remember once when Jesus was in the desert after 40 days of not eating and not drinking? Do you remember that? Yeah? So do you remember what happened? That the Bible says that he was tempted, right? So I like to see that temptation as, because first, Matthew said that he was, he had that thought, he was hungry, right? So he was hungry, and then the thought came, oh, maybe I can eat some, I can transform those stones in bread. Did he accept that? Did he transform the stones in bread? No, he didn't. It was a temptation. It was something that it was not right. And then he really said, and he really thought, okay, man doesn't live only with bread. And with that, he went on, but he had another temptation. And the other temptation was really, he went to a place really high up, and the thought came, oh, yes, if you, why don't you jump here? Because then angels will come and will take charge of you. Do you remember that? What did he say?
I don't exactly remember. This is a story my grandmother told me.
Yeah, so he said no. He said, no, I won't jump. Because what happens if you jump? If you are high in a mountain and you jump? You go down. It's not something good. So he said no. Even though there was this thinking that, yes, maybe angels will take charge of you. And the other thing was what I considered really to have a lot of possession. And he said also no, because the thought came, oh, if you adore me, look, you can be in charge of this whole city in front of you. But he also said no. So this dominion of saying no enabled him to do lots of good things afterwards and lots of healings, which is also important. Mary Baker Eddy says in the book Science and Health that Jesus really had, he overcame sin, disease, and death. And he also said, those who believe in me, whatever I do, can they do also. It is important that we learn this difference between Jesus and the Christ. As I mentioned to you before, the Christ is really this presence of God. So, that is always with us. Mary Baker, the discoverer and founder of Christian Science, also learned how to say no. And she said no to suffering in 1857. She was sick, and she really thought, okay, God, if you help me, I will dedicate my life to help humanity come out of suffering, of human suffering. And what happened was that, yes, she recovered, and she really dedicated her whole life to do this. And if you read Science and Health, it's a book translated into 16 languages, and it has helped and is helping a lot of people around the world. She said no to financial dependence when she was 23 years old. She was also pregnant by herself, and she was able to come out of that situation. She said no to family dependency. She learned how to be independent. When she was about to write this book, and she didn't have a place to live, her sister offered her a home and said, oh, just come over, and you will be able to, I will give you everything. But she said no. She said, no, I have to. But because the sister said, just forget about writing this book. And she said no. And she lived her life. And it was not easy. In a space of 10 years, she moved 40 times. So she said no to poverty. So between 1865 and 1875, she moved 40 times. But she learned how to say no to poverty, and then she had a very stable life. She said, this is a very, she founded the Christian Science Monitor, and the Christian Science Monitor, she founded because she also wanted to say no to injustices or to news that are not correct and not right. So you, every one of you have the right to say yes to what is right. You have the divine right to say yes to a good life. You have just to trust God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. You can trust your intuition. You can trust that God will talk to you and really guide you to the best things. And you can say no to injustices, no to any injustice situation. And by saying no to an injustice situation, you are saying yes to whatever is just, successful, to whatever is good. We can also say no to a past that's not good, to accept a good present. We can say no to any sense of guilt, to say yes to a sense of freedom. So really, if you can take one message today with you, just know that you have your right to be happy. You have your right to have a life that it's free and that it's really happy, and you have your right to say no to anything that might try to take you away from happiness. Know that you are innocent as God's eyes, and that God created you free. And I hope that you really find ways in your life that you can demonstrate more and more about this spiritual freedom and your spiritual rights to always say yes to what is good, to say yes to what God has prepared for your life, because what God has in storage for you for your life really makes you happy and can bring you a very fulfilled life. So thank you very much for staying with us and for being here today. It was my pleasure to be with you, and I hope you had a good afternoon.
Thank you.